Okay, so recording has started.
All right, are we ready to get started?
So I think everyone's
Okay.
ready. Great.
Welcome everyone to Food Waste and You, Strategies to Save Food, Save Money, and Save the Planet. My name is Megan Popkin, and I am a volunteer with Zero Waste Capital District.
And I'm Tina Lieberman, and I'm also a volunteer with Zero Waste Capital District, and also Zero Waste Capital District. Many of our members are also part of the Zero Waste Education Subcommittee for the Albany City Sustainability Advisory Committee, which I know is a huge mouthful, but basically, you know, the city of Albany has a sustainability committee, and we have a subcommittee there that's working toward reducing waste, particularly food waste in the city.
Great, and we also have Diana with us. Diana, do you want to introduce yourself?
Can you unmute? Okay, hold on. There you go.
I can't see my picture anymore because of the screen share. I'm Diana Wright. I am original member of PAUSE, which is People of Albany United for Safe Energy, who's also in this room. I'm a member of Zero Waste Capital District, and I am the owner of Food Scraps 360, which is a Capital District residential food scraps pickup company.
Then we'll be talking about that, and it'll be great for Diana to be here because she can talk about any questions you have about residential pickup services, because that's another option. You can do the composting yourself. You can drop it off at a community drop-off site, or you can pay to have it picked up for convenience.
All right. So to get us started and kind of frame our conversation today, we're going to start with a brief video, just a couple minutes, called The Extraordinary Life and Times of a Strawberry.
Oh, my sweet baby, I'll travel the world for you. I love you.
Can we get strawberries?
No, honey.
Please?
Okay.
All right, so that's pretty incredible. I'm sure many of us can relate to that story. You know, we have the best intentions in buying food at the store, and sometimes it just doesn't get eaten and ends up getting wasted. And as the video mentioned at the end, up to 40% of all food that is grown, processed, and transported in the United States is wasted. And we're going to be talking a little bit more today about this problem and what we can all do about it. Okay, so we are going to get started with a poll question.
Muted. Okay, first poll question. Can you guys see it? Okay, yes, you can. What % of food waste do you think occurs in households? So 15 of 18 voted. Okay. Give it another few seconds. Everyone get their votes in. Yeah, except for us who are presenting. That makes sense. Okay. So, yep, most people guessed 43%, and that's correct.
All
At least
right.
that's the best data we have. Yeah.
Yes. So that's good job, everyone, in your guesses on that. This chart here from the NRDC shows that 43% of food waste is generated in households. So it's the biggest portion shown here on this chart, and you can see some of the other areas: restaurants, farms, groceries. And so that's a big percentage, 43%. And so, but rather than, you know, feel bad about this or be disappointed in this, I think it's can be really empowering, because it means that we have a big opportunity to make a difference in the area of food waste, because we can all control what happens in our households. And just for a little more context, in 1 year, a family of 4 wastes $1,500 of food. So that's a lot of money, and I'm sure we can all think of, you know, what we would like to do with an extra $1,500 a year.
I think the little video about the strawberry really points out that you're wasting so much more than just the fruit itself or the food itself. You think about all of the energy that goes into producing the food, and that includes the fossil fuels that's being used to, you know, fuel the tractors that are doing the plowing and the planting, and and you think about the weeding, and then the harvesting and the packaging. And you think about the packaging itself, you saw in the video, was plastic, a plastic clamshell. That's made from fossil fuels, and that takes a lot of energy to produce. And then it's shipped either by truck, by plane, and that also uses a lot of energy and fuel and fossil fuels again, and the labor that goes into it. And then you look at the nutrients that also get wasted. I mean, there's a finite amount of nutrients in and a finite amount of topsoil that we have for growing. And when you take all those nutrients and you end up throwing them in a landfill, they're going to a place where it's not going to get used again for growing. It's not going to get recycled into the earth, because a toxic landfill is not going to be used for growing food. And then you look at, a lot of people don't realize that when you put food waste into a landfill, it is broken down anaerobically by bacteria that don't have oxygen, and so it produces methane. And methane is a very, very potent greenhouse gas, about 86 times more potent than carbon dioxide at warming our planet. And that is a great contributor to climate change. So there's so many good reasons not to waste food, and to do the best we can to reduce that kind of waste. Interesting, if food waste was a country, it would be the 3rd largest greenhouse gas emitter. And if you want, you could put some guesses in the chat as to who are the largest countries that emit greenhouse gases. Who are the top 2? Anyone want to take a guess? Put it in the chat. Not seeing any guesses at this point. But so the first largest producer of greenhouse gases, there I'm seeing it. Good, 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 excellent. Yep, you got it. China's the first largest, the USA is the second largest, but per capita, the USA is the first largest. Okay. So, Project Drawdown is a wonderful nonprofit organization, and they published a book, and they're an online resource as well. And they list the top 100 things you can do to draw carbon back down into the planet and to reduce carbon emissions. And of the 100 top things that they've figured out would help, preventing food waste is number 3 on the list. The top 3. The only 2 above that, number 1 is reducing refrigerants, hydrofluorocarbons, and the second is building more wind turbines for energy supply.
Okay.
Second poll question. Before now, did you know that food scraps in a landfill emit methane and contribute to climate change? How many of you knew that before? Great. So roughly 60%, 62% knew it, and 38% didn't. It's good. It's good that we're spreading the word about that because it's an important part of food waste.
Yeah, definitely. And for those of you, now that you all know, you can help us spread the word to those in your network. Okay, so now that we have gone over the problem of food waste and the impact, we're going to talk about what we can do about it. And so for this presentation, we're going to talk about how we can each prevent food waste at the store, at home, and at the curb. So starting off with at the store, we want to prepare for our grocery shopping, right? So I'm sure many of us do this. You make a weekly meal plan and a list. It's important to involve others in your household in the plan to make sure, you know, based on their schedules and what they're interested in eating for the week, and really be realistic. I'm sure many of us create grand plans for cooking amazing dinners 7 nights a week. And that doesn't always then work out, right? So, you know, maybe only plan a few dinners a week, plan for some lazy nights, you know, sandwiches, leftovers, things like that, to really be realistic to what you think you can prepare and eat in that 1 week. And then use ingredients more than once, right? So if you're planning a recipe that calls for half a jar of pasta sauce, what are you going to do with the other half a jar? Is there something else that you can use it for in that same week? Are you going to freeze it or save it? So really think about the ingredients you're buying for that particular week and how you're going to use the entire ingredient, the entire container of food, whatever it is that you're buying, not just the small portion that you might need for one meal. So kind of grouping your meals by the ingredients you need is a good way to use everything up. And then shop your kitchen first. How many times have you gotten home from the store, you're putting things away and you realize you bought something that was already in your pantry, right? I know I've done that. So really do a survey of your kitchen, your refrigerator, your pantry, see what you have and see what you can use up first rather than adding additional things to your grocery list. It's a great way to save money as well. You know, I've already got these handful of things that I can make a meal out of. So that's one less meal that I have to buy at the store, and it helps, you know, use up the food. And then when you're at the store, you want to shop with intention, right? So only buy what you need for that particular week to make sure that it's going to stay fresh and that you're going to be able to eat it in time. And then beware of sales. It can be really tempting to buy a lot of something if it's on sale, but it's only a good deal if you actually eat it, right? So be careful of sales. And then buy the ugly food, right? So a funny shaped carrot tastes just as good as a perfectly, shaped carrot. And a lot of times people are very particular with their produce and what they're selecting. And then the items that don't get selected are going to get tossed out by the grocery store. And so, everything that's in front of you at the store has been, reviewed, it's gone through all the processes, it's good to eat. So just grabbing what's first in front of you, or intentionally picking up those ugly items that you think others might not pick, to make sure that they get used up and eaten, is a great way to reduce food waste as well. Okay. And so then you've done your preparation, you've done your shopping, and now you get your food home. So we want to think about how we store our food. Okay, so really try to think about, does this item go in the refrigerator, in the freezer, or on the counter? And if you have an item that tends to go bad frequently, do a little research to try to figure out, is there a way that I can store this better to extend the life of the food, right? Do I need to, what Diana mentioned, washing strawberries first, or, is there a different way that I can prepare this or store it to keep it lasting? Something like an avocado, you want to keep it on the counter until it gets ripe, and then putting it in the refrigerator can make it last longer. An eat me first bin or a list. So this is a great tip to create, a shelf or a little Tupperware container in your refrigerator for items that are, that you've had in there the longest, that you want to eat up first. You can also create a list on the front of your refrigerator. This is a great thing to do when you first get home from the grocery store. Before you put away all the new food you just bought, take the food that's in there and say, okay, I've got to eat up this apple, this, leftover item, whatever it may be. Put all that in one area in your refrigerator so that you know to eat that first, so that it doesn't go bad. And then study your refrigerator. So this is a great little chart or diagram here from the National Resource Defense Council. And the refrigerator actually has different temperatures. Not everything is the same temperature within a refrigerator, right? So the door of a refrigerator is actually the warmest, because you're opening and closing it and it's furthest from the cold source. So, you don't want to put your milk on the door. You want to put, things that we probably all do, like condiments, things like that, on the door of the refrigerator. And then the body of the refrigerator is coldest at the bottom and gets warmer as you go up. So you can see here, it has meats down low, then some dairy, and then some, sweets, leftovers, and things like that. There's also a high humidity drawer, which is great for most vegetables, and a low humidity drawer, which is great for most fruits. So really studying your refrigerator can help you store food and make the food last as long as possible. And then using your freezer, right? So we talked about the half a jar of pasta sauce. You can put that in the freezer if you don't think you're going to eat it in time. So really trying to utilize your freezer, leave room for liquids to expand in the containers that you're using. Labeling things that you're putting in the freezer is helpful, and even keeping a list maybe on the front of your refrigerator or somewhere that you can easily access it, of what you have in the freezer so that you know what's in there and can use it up. Okay, so then the next piece of advice we have is to make sure that you eat what you buy, right? So reviving old foods. So don't be so quick to throw something out if you think it's starting to not look great, right? So if your bread is getting a little hard and it's not really ideal for a sandwich anymore, you can make croutons. Or if it's really hard, you can even make breadcrumbs. I make croutons about once a week. It's super easy, just a little oil, some spices, pop it in the oven, and you've got great croutons in like 20 minutes. You can also take, limp lettuce and put it in water to revive that a little bit. So try to see if there's a way that you can salvage foods that, maybe aren't looking like they did when you first bought it. Hero recipes, right? So we've all heard throw it all in with a sauce, right? You can make soups or stocks, or some type of stir fry. I'm always just throwing a bunch of vegetables in a pan with some coconut oil and then scrambling up some eggs and making like an egg stir fry. So there's a lot of different things that you can use, that you can do to save some foods. Eating root to stem is another great tip, right? So eating the entire broccoli, not using a peeler, right? Ditch your peeler, just wash your fruits and vegetables. There's a lot of nutrients in the skins of a lot of vegetables to really use it all up, rather than discarding. Sometimes we're discarding up to half of a piece of, a vegetable or a fruit. Really think if you can use the entire item. And then consider portion sizes. So there's a great resource that we have linked at the end that you can use. I believe it's on the Save the Food website, but we have the link on our resources page at the end, where you can put in, how many people you're feeding, what type of meal you're cooking, and it'll help you select the portions to buy and cook for your meal. And letting the people that you're serving serve their own plates, rather than pre-portioning out meals, is a great way to make sure that everyone's selecting their own portions, and they're more likely to eat everything on their plate. And then lastly, at home, expiration dates. So you might be surprised to learn that most expiration dates are not actually federally regulated, with the exception being infant formula and some baby food. And so with expiration dates, they're really suggestions, and we really encourage you to rely on your own senses when looking at expiration dates. So how does this item look? How does it smell? Even tasting it. Does this seem, like it's something I can still eat? And this eatbydate.com website is a great resource where you can look up all sorts of different foods, and it'll explain how, the different dates, like this item can be safely eaten, for X number of days or weeks past its expiration date. So a lot of foods can actually be safely eaten past its expiration date. So it's a great way to save food as well. Okay, so we've done our shopping. We have, done what we can in terms of our storage and our cooking and eating the food at home. Now we really want to prevent the food from going out to the curb and out to the trash can. So what are the last things we can do? So you can donate food, right? So look for a food pantry or a food drive. The food pantries for the Capital District website has a great map where you can just put in your address and it'll show you all of the food pantries in your area. There might be some other community organizations as well that you know of. Different religious organizations sometimes have food pantries or food drives. In the Albany area, there's this fairly new initiative, the free food fridges. So there's different types of initiatives that are, collecting food and giving it out to those that need it. And then lastly, look to neighbors, friends, and family. Do you have a neighbor that, might eat a certain food that you don't think you're going to be able to eat, or, friends and family in the area that you can share with to help reduce food waste? Okay.
So the next thing to do, if you can't reduce the amount of food you end up with, and you can't, it's not in good enough shape to share it, or give it to a food rescue organization or food pantry or your neighbor, then you want to look at composting what's left. And that basically, so we're basically returning all of those good nutrients and that food waste back into the earth to be used again to grow new food. And that's the way the earth works. There is no waste in nature, and that's a beautiful thing. So a lot of people say composting really connects them with the earth and its natural cycles. And so, it's a great connector. There are three main ways that we've identified to do composting. One is to do it at home in your backyard or indoors. Indoors would be vermicomposting, worm composting, or bokashi composting. Those are two really the most popular ways to do the indoor composting. And then there's community composting, which would be, we have, for example, in the area, we have free community compost drop-off sites in the Capital District, and we have 3 in Albany now, and they're listed here on the slide. One is at the Raddick Center, one at the Tivoli Farm and Preserve, and the other is at the Albany Victory Gardens. There's community composting in Troy every week, both at the Atrium on Saturdays, right about now, actually, and also at the Troy Farmers Market. They're always collecting at those 2 places. And there's also in Amsterdam, you basically need to take an orientation, and then you get a time to drop off, also on Saturdays. We are also looking at drop off at the Colony Farmers Market, and that would be coming this season. So, and we're trying to round up some volunteers to help us with that on Saturday mornings. And we have heard that the Schenectady Urban Farms is also looking at doing a community compost drop-off site. So that's really exciting for the Capital District. And I believe Wendy has mentioned that Columbia County, Zero Waste Columbia County, there also is a compost drop-off site happening there. And Wendy, if you're still with us and you want to just type something into the chat about that, that would be great. And the third option for getting your food scraps composted is to do a paid pickup service. Basically, there are 3 residential pickup services in the area, and there's 1 main commercial compost service. Actually, I think Casella also is picking up, but for commercial. But for our residential, we have the Raddick Center in downtown Albany, and they pick up only in the city of Albany. And we have Food Scraps 360, and Diane is here, and we'll talk more about that. And she picks up in Albany, Schenectady, Rensselaer counties, and also in Saratoga Springs, there's Loving Earth Compost. Diana, do you want to weigh in now a little bit about your service, or do you want to wait till the end?
Am I muted?
Nope, we can hear you.
I can wait to the end and if somebody has questions, but basically, we've been doing residential pickup every other week. The rates and stuff you can get 2 5-gallon bins. If you produce a lot of waste, or a 1 5-gallon bin, they're screw top lids, so they keep out the critters and keep in the smell, which there isn't really all that much. And then we drop off after our route to the Bethlehem compost facility, and they turn it into compost at the residents of Delmar, which is where a lot of our customers can go and actually pick up the compost to put back in their garden so that the circle is complete. We do some smaller businesses like bakeries and smoothie places, like smaller pizzerias or stuff like that. And we are actually growing and expanding. We're going to be working on getting all of Delmar and expanding in Troy. And I am also working on, and will be doing, because I've already purchased the property on Sligo in the 2nd Avenue neighborhood area of Albany, to be the 4th free residential compost drop-off site, and it will also have 6 community gardens for the local residents there if they don't have room in their backyard. And we will be doing educational workshops there as well to teach people a lot of what you learned on this video, how to make raised beds, how to do vermiculture, how to grow and start your seeds, and just everything that is necessary to be able to produce your own food so that we don't have to be depending on California strawberries. We can grow our own and keep everything local and reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we're producing, and just pretty much helping people to realize that there's a different way of living that's a lot more in touch with nature, and it's more rewarding, and it's more healthy, and it's a lot less expensive.
Great. So, and Diana has a website that you can visit. So thank you, Diana. And then we can have some questions for you later. Okay, so I think we have another poll question. Should I launch this poll? Try.
I can do it. Yep, I've got it up here.
Good.
There we go.
So the question here, and there's a lot of different answers to choose from, is, are you composting your food scraps now? Just wanted to get a sense of what people in this workshop are doing now. And what services they're using. So good. So we have a whole lot of very interesting answers here. We have a variety. A lot of people composting in their backyards. Some people using community drop-off sites. Some people using paid pickup services. Some doing the vermicomposting or bokashi indoors. And some people who aren't composting now, and some who would like to try. So we do have, if you're interested in composting in your backyard and learning how to, or bokashi or vermicomposting, and you want to learn how, make sure that you sign up on the form that's in the chat, and we'll get back to you. We do have a mentor program for composting, and we can match you up with someone who will mentor you and help you figure it out. There is also, if you look in the chat, a half-price composter sale going on now through May 1st and May 5th that you can get through the cities of the towns of Bethlehem and the city of Troy. So that's a really great opportunity that only comes around once a year for those half-price ones. And the city of Albany, around Earth Day, will be launching a composting pilot. And you'll be able to get a free composter if you live in the city of Albany, if you're willing to provide weekly information on how much you compost.
Okay, so we've just got a couple more slides with some contact information for us here. So you can contact Zero Waste Capital District on our website here, and we have some great resources on waste reduction, composting. We also link to those drop-off sites we talked about. We have an Instagram and a Facebook, and you can also email us here at info@zerowastecd.org. And then we have this Google contact form that Tina posted in the chat if you'd like to receive more information about anything we've talked about today. And the City of Albany Sustainability Advisory Committee also has an email here, a website, and a Facebook page. And then just some additional resources. So I talked about the Save the Food, which is a great resource if you're interested in learning more. Wastedfood.com, really interesting. So there's different resources online for composting, meal planning, portion planning, just different tips for reducing your waste at home. And then I think we have one more poll question, and then we'll be happy to take some questions.
So we were wondering how people thought that they might use the information that they've received in this workshop today. You can choose more than one here. So after this presentation, what steps are you going to take to reduce your food waste? So will you shop your kitchen before going to the store? Will you change how you store your food? Are you considering trying to make those hero recipes where you're focusing on using up leftovers in your recipes? Will you rethink expiration dates on your food? Are you going to be looking at donating your food? Are you going to be looking at composting now? Wow, great variety of answers across all of those. So top answer is composting and making hero recipes, and you can choose more than one. A lot of people are going to look at how they store their food. Expiration dates, great, all of them. That's great, that's wonderful. So I think now I am going to open the chat up. We'll keep recording. So let me allow you to unmute yourselves. That's what I meant, unmute yourselves. And okay, so now you can unmute yourselves. And we'll get rid of that. And I did see a question in the chat. Mary Beth wrote, I'm in a rural area. We're warned that composting may attract bears in spring and summer. Any advice? I think Diana has some good advice. You're muted. Okay,
Okay, now I'm unmuted.
there you go. Okay, that
Okay.
might have been me.
All right, and I was reading the chat, so I didn't hear what you said because I can't apparently read and listen at the same time.
All right, so Mary Beth wanted to know if she's living in a rural area and she's warned composting may attract bears in spring and summer. Any advice? And I know this question came up earlier.
Yes, before, yeah. So that's a big concern, and there's the two things that you can do is the bokashi indoor composting, which Tina knows a little bit more about, and then there's vermiculture, which you can go online, and there's all sorts of vermiculture kits that you can get that range from like $40 to you can get something really elaborate, or you can just go on YouTube and they will show you how to do an at-home vermiculture setup, which is you can just get a Rubbermaid tote with a lid and you put layers of newspaper and soil, and you do have to buy the special vermiculture worms. You can't just get any worms. And then you just feed the tote, and the worms will eat it up and turn it into worm castings, which are really, really awesome for your garden. And you can keep these inside. And as long as they don't freeze, it lasts year round. And again, it doesn't really smell, so you can keep it in your food pantry, in your kitchen, or you can keep it in your basement or in a closet. My next door neighbors keep it in their coat closet, and it works really, really well.
Yeah, as far as rats and attracting other vermin or whatever, rodents. So you don't put in a backyard composting bin, you would not put meat, fish, or dairy. And that seems to eliminate a lot of the problems with getting, rodents and whatnot in there. Yeah, attracting them. So also you can purchase a plastic screen to go on the bottom of your compost pile, which also prevents them from coming in under the bottom, but yet lets it stay in contact with the earth so worms and stuff can get through there, but mice and rats can't. But mostly what we hear is that if people are trying to compost meat, dairy, and fish, that's when the problems start. Also, don't let it stay too wet. That means that you want a nice, the proper proportions of your greens, which is your the food scraps that you're putting in that are full of nitrogen, and you want at least twice to 3 times as much of the browns, which is the carbon-based things like your dead leaves, your straw, your wood chips or twigs, or dead vegetation. So you want a lot of that. I keep a whole separate pile with my leaves or wood chips, anything I happen to scrounge up separately. So I have it right through the winter. It's always there. I keep replenishing it when I can. And I always put lots of handfuls in on top of the greens that I put in. It's like a lasagna layering method. And that also seems to keep down odors. And I haven't had any trouble with rodents and pests. What else do we have in the chat?
Somebody's asking if the compost facility in Delmar will be filled to capacity once 2022 law goes into effect, where any commercial entity that has more than 2,000 pounds or 2 tons a week. I can't remember.
2,000 tons per week.
2,000 pounds. Or 2
Pounds.
tons.
Thank
So that's
you.
2 tons.
2 tons per week. Yeah, 2,000.
Thank you. Okay.
4,000 pounds. 4,000
4,000 pounds.
So,
I'm good. Yeah.
so
2 tons.
we need to keep it consistent as to the weight, so I don't get confusion with the two. But Dan has, we have talked to him about gearing up with collecting more for Food Scraps 360, and he can do, I think, 20 tons a week right now. I think that's the number, but he
20 tons per month right now.
20 tons per month. Okay, thank you. And what's going to happen is as we ramp up and more people compost, they're going to expand their facility, so they don't anticipate that there's going to be a limit. Because it's not going to be just, oh, good, let's just throw away our food that we're not using. It's also going to be education to reduce what we're using so that we're not wasting so much food in the first place. Because even though composting is a really, really great way to get rid of your wasted food, it's best not to waste it in the first place.
So right now, are people who live in Bethlehem allowed to drop off their residential
I'm not
compost?
sure if they are, because I know that that residents can go and pick up the compost, but I don't think that they want to have people arbitrarily wandering around there for liability.
If I could chime in, I know that they are not allowing that. So Diana and I are working with them on making sure that they have options for dropping things off somewhere, including the curbside option, which is just the most convenient option for residents. And about the capacity and them reaching the capacity and the January law that'll go into effect, they're very, very strict on the quality of product that comes in, which really goes back to education, and which is a big focus of Diana's with Food Scraps 360, making sure that everybody's educated on what exactly should go in those bins so that we have the best quality product coming out of in the form of compost that goes back into the earth.
And that's a very important point, because if you go with a Casella, who's a commercial waste collector for food scraps, they're not going to be watching what's going in the food scraps, and they're bound to be lots of contaminants unless they're doing a really careful job. So that's why we really want to encourage people to use these homegrown, locally owned residential compost pickup services who really care about the quality of the compost and are making sure it goes back into the soil.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Casella is doing with theirs, because last I knew, they haven't created any new compost facilities, because that takes money and equipment that they don't have for just regular trash disposal. So I don't know if they're bringing it somewhere else or if they're planning on bringing it to anaerobic digesters, which there will be 4 coming online in the next year or so in Albany County that we collaborated with Saratoga County, which will be using our raw sewage, and I think that they're going to be collecting from like the Albany jail and the Albany nursing home that are really, really big sources of organic waste. But that's going to go into an anaerobic digester, and it's going to be used mostly, it will create methane gas, which will then be used to fuel the anaerobic digester. So it's a better option than throwing it directly into landfill, but it's not the best option compared to composting, because the nutrients will never go back into the soil again, and it doesn't really complete the circle. So I'm thinking that Casella may be doing that.
Yeah, and just to, there was a delay. I think they anticipated being open by 2022 with those anaerobic digesters, but the last I heard, it might be more like 2023 or 2024. And there will be, they did talk about it, biosolids. In addition to producing methane, there are biosolids that are produced at the end, and they were considering whether they should sterilize them and clean them up so that it could be spread on agricultural, used for agricultural purposes. Hopefully, I don't feel so great about it being used to grow food, but it could be used for landscaping purposes. So not as good as getting it into a commercial windrow composting facility where it's turned into soil to be used.
Right, and the commercial facilities can take everything except for large steak bones. They can take greasy pizza boxes. They can take fish bones, chicken bones, small meat bones. They can take, which I was surprised, clam shells from clam bakes and mussel shells, lobsters shells. They can take. Oh, that's the other thing that I just realized. My roommate likes to use a lot of Kleenexes, and that the napkins and Kleenexes or tissues are too thin to be recycled. Plus, they're also soiled. So typically everybody throws them in the garbage and it goes to the landfill, but it's paper, it's organic, and it can be composted. So we've been starting to throw our using just the bathroom garbage can for the paper waste, so that it doesn't have like plastic or anything else in it, and then we just throw it in the compost bin to get taken every 2 weeks. Eggshells, coffee grounds, and actually the eggshells and the coffee grounds, even if you're not composting in your backyard and you do have some gardens, you have house plants, the coffee grounds and the eggshells are really, really, really great just on their own to put in your soil for your house plants and your flowers outside.
Yeah, I think we should also make a distinction. A lot of people ask about compostable takeout food service ware. Those are not wanted, even even by the commercial composting facilities. Dan Rain in Bethlehem does not want them. They don't break down very quickly at all, and only with high heat. So last I heard, even Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency doesn't want them. They want 1 month hot on a pile and 1 month off to finish. And those compostable containers and cups do not break down that quickly.
And they also have potential toxins in them because they need something to hold their shape. And so a lot of times they do put toxic chemicals in them to help them fulfill their need of being moisture resistant, for instance, to hold your coffee and so that they don't leak. And it's been known that some PFOAs have been put in the plastic, the biodegradable quote unquote plastic that they're making, and we certainly don't want PFOAs in our soil.
And you don't want it in your food either. It breaks down into your food when you've got it. Like if you're putting hot coffee in a cup lined with or a container that's lined with paper, but it's mixed with PFOAs, that is cancer causing, and it will break down into your food. Any other questions? And please put them in the chat, or just unmute yourself and speak.
Okay, I unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Hi, Chris. Yes.
Hi, Tina. So I've been composting for many years, and I wanted to address the issue of things not composting all at the same rate. It takes a little bit of extra effort to sort things that compost quickly versus those that compost slowly, but you can just maintain 2 piles when things have finished kind of breaking down. The stuff that hasn't broken down, you just move it to the slow compost pile. And that's, worked for me. I do very, very informal composting in my backyard. Just thought I'd mention that. That certainly does not address PFOA issues and things like that, which should not be in your compost.
Right, and that also brings up, you can help things that compost longer, compost shorter by cutting them up. Like if you're going to be putting in, and you shouldn't be putting in a high quantity of like citrus fruit skins, like grapefruits and oranges and lemons. But if you cut them into smaller pieces, that helps them to break down faster.
I wanted to comment about the anaerobic digesters that are also doing sewage sludge. The problem is if you mix sewage sludge with the food compost, you're going to get whatever people put down the drain.
I know.
So that's the trouble with that.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
they
like,
say they're going
educating-
to sterilize it, but
I know, but if people are dumping medications down the drain, you can't sterilize medication.
right.
What about heavy metals? You can't sterilize heavy metals, So
And
there's
fertilizer.
a lot of education that could be done for people to stop using things that are toxic, in the first place.
Absolutely. Also, Wendy had commented that she lives in the country, has bears. She tracks when they arrive in season, and they may get into the compost, but mostly they've like bird seed, and she suggests stirring the compost to kind of mix it up. I find that layering it with the leaves seems to work really well too.
I got this
Question.
idea.
Yeah, I mean, even at the compost facility in Bethlehem, I know that they say that they have that it attracts coyotes, and the deer actually love to roll pumpkins and apples. They like to play with the pumpkins and apples. The deer will come and take it out, but they once they bury it, it's much harder to get to. So if it's compost pile that you're keeping. I saw another video of a compost that you can do by making a round screen of like chicken wire that's about 5 feet tall, and you layer it with leaves, and then your compost, and you can layer it that way, kind of like a lasagna kind of composting, and that way it's harder to also get at, and it's much more contained, and what's the word I'm looking for? It's not just out in the open, so it's kind of it's contained within other composting, so that it's not as aerated, so that they don't even know that it's there. It doesn't smell so much.
Someone asked about how do you get the worms for the vermicomposting? Well, I know you can order the red wriggler worms. You can order them online, but there's also the Adirondack Worm Farm. I'm going to put that link in the chat.
So I have a question. What is the ideal ratio of brown to green compost? I've heard anything from 2:1 to 10:1.
Yeah, I asked Scott Kellogg about that. What would he suggest? Because for backyard composting, he said 3:1 would be fine, 2 to 3:1. But he said for more commercial, if you're doing larger amounts, he moved toward the 10:1 and the higher range, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if I fully grasped that, but for backyard, he said, 2 to 3 times as many browns as the green stuff. The food scraps would be fine.
I think that maybe the reason why is because if you put 10:1, that it helps to get the soil hotter faster.
I have a question about community composting, and I live in Berkshire County, and am delighted that we have a board of select people who are keen to do everything in green as much as they're able. But I'm I'm really interested in sort of a primer for, and I know it differs from state to state, a primer on how to get going on community composting. Obviously, you've all said that education is key, and we've held a number of little workshops on composting, and some obviously lately virtual. But I'm wondering if there are websites that have particular steps. I've hosted workshops for agriculture and windrow composting, but interested to have your feedback and ideas about that. And thanks so much for all these great tips. And we have bears once a year. They come by, and for the last 30 years, they've said, oh, it's March 15th, we're off to see the Russells and eat away at the compost. And the voles don't care about plastic. They've just been eating through every heavy duty plastic compost bin I've ever owned. And I've had 6 or 7. So, but sometimes I feed them exciting things.
So Jenny, where do you live?
In Sheffield. Over
that
Berkshire.
In
Yeah.
the Berkshires.
Yeah.
So you're interested in how to start community composting?
Yeah, we have a select person who's very keen on it and has made some inroads, but I didn't know if there was sort of an easy primer.
Yeah, there is. There is. I'm going to put Institute for Local Self-Reliance. I'm putting
cool.
their website
good.
in the chat. They're
Nice.
located in the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area. Fabulous nonprofit, and they have done a lot of work with community composting in Baltimore particularly. And so I think they have written up a guide and that you'll
Great.
find online for community
Wonderful.
composting.
Wonderful.
We were very blessed in Albany. Basically, the city didn't really want to own any of the community compost sites because that would make them responsible for the upkeep, and they've got their hands full with trash collection and road clearing and all the millions of things they have to do. But we were blessed to have nonprofits take it up, and of course, so all of them, all 3 nonprofits, and Diana, who's going to come on as the 4th site with her lot, they all have community gardens associated with them, and that makes a lot of sense. So you have a ready group of volunteers who can help. There's usually one person who's in charge, and that's where the composting takes place, and that's where the composting can be used. Compost can be used. The finished product can be used.
Yeah.
All 3 have adopted chickens.
Oh, yes.
So they can use the chickens also to break down the compost quickly. And that seems to work nicely too. But I think associating it with if you have community gardens or getting that started alongside a drop-off site could work.
Yeah. All right. Super. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, anything we haven't covered? We've 3 minutes to noon. What are the community composters in Albany? Like, what are the 3 sites? They're listed on our webpage, zerowastecd.org, under community composting. We have the Raddick Center down in the South End. We have Albany Victory Gardens on First and Quail. And we also have the Tivoli, I think it's called Farm and Preserve, over near Henry Johnson Boulevard. And they're all open 24/7 for food scraps drop off. Just please be careful, take off the plastic stickers from your fruit peels. That's always something we all forget, like those avocados and those banana stickers. Make sure no plastics are going in, no tags.
No tie, twist
no
ties.
Right, Diane, I guess you see those. Accidentally they end up going in, and then they're all going to use what you give them as food scraps. They're going to turn it into soil. They're going to use it for growing food for local people, local population. I know Raddick has a CSA. I know Albany Victory Gardens allows local people. They're in an economically deprived environmental justice area. The people there are growing food and then selling it in a market that's located right there, back to the community, back to people in the community. So there's an income issue there for people who really need the income and enjoy growing the food. Also,
think-
we are looking at another, Albany Victory Gardens may also, they are looking into starting a commercial composting facility in the city of Albany, some land they just purchased.
I think it's important also to look at the long-term market, because if anaerobic digesters go online big time, they're going to want guaranteed flow, right? So how do we keep our good quality food compost from getting swallowed up into inferior
Right.
anaerobic sludge? you
Yes,
know?
that's why that's absolutely a huge concern, which is why we're trying to get smaller residential pickup companies online and moving so that we can compete with the big guys when they come in and finally want to do this, because it's going to be really hard to compete against them unless we're already established.
And education, education, education.
Right. So it's noon, and this is our official time to end. We've really enjoyed sharing information with you, sharing this time with you, having the discussions with you. We could do this all day, but we're going to end the recording. Let me just make sure I can do that. And we want to thank you for coming. I want to point out, again, we've got Food Scraps 360 has a website. Zero Waste Capital District, zerowastecd.org has a website. In the chat, you can stay. Our room is open, but there are many other things to see and do at the fair. We also here represent PAWS, People of Albany United for Safe Energy, which is also 350.org, a nonprofit group dedicated to climate change and reducing carbon emissions. So you can hang around if you want. I'm going to officially stop this workshop though. And at 12:30, there's a keynote speaker, Reyes Salter from the Climate Action Council of New York State. And her particular focus is environmental justice.
Thank you very much. It's a lot of information. Appreciate it.